Do you ever wonder why productivity is slowing or why engagement feels stuck? It might not be your strategy. It might be your curiosity gap. Welcome to the Leadership Career Accelerator, where we help aspiring leaders like you build executive presence, influence with impact, and get recognized and promoted. I am longtime CEO Barry Moline. My mission is to help you grow as a leader, elevate your career, and improve your life. If you enjoy learning leadership tools, please hit subscribe. In return, my promise is to keep bringing you ideas that make you a better leader. I care about you, and I'm proud of you. Because you're here, I know you're serious about building the better life you want for yourself and the people you care about. Today, I talk with Dr. Deborah Clary, the author of The Curiosity Curve, and a former senior executive with 4 decades of leadership experience. She's passionate about helping leaders create cultures where curiosity leads to innovation, trust, and performance. Dr. Clary breaks down why curiosity drops as we enter adulthood and how to bring it back. The 4 zones of curiosity and how they show up in teams: exploration, openness to new ideas, inspirational creativity, and focused engagement. Why leaders should stop giving answers and start asking better questions. Real-world examples from Coca-Cola, including learning to adapt to different leadership communication styles, and the importance of adapting your curiosity style depending on who you're working with. You'll learn how curiosity directly correlates with team performance based on an MIT study. You'll learn ways to assess your own curiosity using Dr. Clary's free online tool with a link in the show notes. You'll learn how to turn curiosity into a habit that improves your leadership and boosts team morale. And you'll learn why "I don't know, let's explore this together" might be the most powerful sentence in your leadership toolkit. After the episode, I encourage you to take Dr. Clary's curiosity assessment. And again, you can find that link in the show notes. It's a great episode, and you'll learn what I think is one of the most important leadership skills: curiosity. Let's get into it. Well, welcome, Deborah.
Thank you.
So, Deborah, why do you think it's important to talk about curiosity?
I think that curiosity is the missing piece in organizations today.
Is it a point that people aren't doing it, or they're not trained to do it, or just they're moving too fast to be curious?
So I say that, that it's like the curiosity missing in organization, and that's based on 4 decades of corporate experience at Frito-Lay, Coca-Cola, Jack Daniels, some of the major brands out there. And I began to see that productivity was slowing, engagement was slowing, and I wondered what was missing. And I had a hypothesis that curiosity might be that attribute that was missing. And so I commissioned a group of researchers out of MIT to do some primary research for me. I mean, I was serious about this. This just wasn't like, hey, this could be a fun thing. I really wondered if there was data behind it. And so they set out on a mission on my behalf to understand the relatedness between leadership, performance, and curiosity. And 3 months later, they came back and said, "How did you know?" There is a direct correlation between a leader's level of curiosity and the team's performance. And that's when I knew for sure that curiosity was missing in organizations.
Wow. So that study said it was missing. Did it say anything about how to fix it?
Yeah. Well, I did additional research on that. First, you have to begin with saying, wait, we're born curious. As toddlers, we ask 298 questions a day. And this is based on a study from some neuroscientists out of London. So that gets documented. And you might say, come on, toddlers don't even talk. Well, if they pointed, that was a question. And so they went on to do further research and said most adults ask about 5 questions. So how do we go from such a high number to such a low number? And the reason is that we're taught to be incurious, right? So we go to school and children are to be seen and not heard. Curiosity killed the cat. Don't open Pandora's box, and on and on and on. And so we eventually get just in curiosity is beat out of us. And then you go to the university and you get a law degree or you get an accounting degree and you become an expert. And you go into the workplace and you are rewarded for that expertise. And, oh, by the way, Barry, you don't have a whole lot of time to be studying other different ideas. And so we stayed locked into being incurious because of time constraints and because we're rewarded in a different way.
By the way, just pausing here for a second. Curiosity killed the cat. That's an expression we may have heard. I think it's about a cat like walking around near a hot stove. It's curious and it gets burned or something. But it sounds like it's from a spy novel or something. Whereas stay in your lane, don't investigate further. I've told you everything you need to know. Is that something that goes on in business where people feel like this is my job, I'm just going to do my job, and therefore it's best for me not to ask more questions? Is this where it's coming from?
So there's 2 things so curiosity killed the cat. I wrote that in my book. And my editor came back and said, well, you need to cite that. And I'm like, my mother. And they go, no, you need to cite it. And I go, yeah, Miss Erickson. And she goes, we need to either pull it from the book or you need to cite it. And so I looked up, did some research, and said, where did that come from? It's actually attributed to William Shakespeare in 1589. And guess what? Curiosity killed the cat is only the first part of the sentence. Did you know this?
Okay. No, tell me more.
Here's the entire sentence. Curiosity killed the cat, but satisfaction brought it back.
Huh.
Nobody taught us that.
So it investigated and found something it liked.
It was worth it. So that's the first part of your question is, where does that come from? But then secondly, leaders are trained to believe that they should have all the answers. Leaders have the answers. And so what typically happens is an employee comes into the office, the employee puts the problem on the table, the leader takes a look at it and says, you need to go do these things, and sends them on their way. Now that's really efficient, right? Because you've just told them what to do and they take off. And you got time constraints, and oh, by the way, you're the expert. What great leadership is about is when the employee brings the problem in, sets it on the table, the leader asks the employee a series of questions that helps them try to solve the problem on their own. When you answer a question, you've answered one question. But when you help somebody solve it on their own, you're helping them with their critical thinking and you're building their confidence. That's what leadership is all about.
Yeah. I was a CEO for 29 years, and I don't know when this clicked in, but I realized that I didn't have all the answers, and I was dealing with a staff full of experts in their own world. And I took an approach of teamwork, I guess I'd say, where people would come in with a situation or a problem. And by the way, it wouldn't always happen this way. I'll tell you about the second way. They'd come in with a problem or a situation, and I'd say, let's talk about it and let's figure this out and just put all the cards on the table. And it got to a point where people felt comfortable coming to me not with, here's my solution, but here's generally the direction I'm going, and here's a few speed bumps. Let's talk about our ideas for those speed bumps and brainstorm with them. Mm-hmm. And it was just an approach that I took that was more collaborative.
Yes.
When people would come to me and say, here is the whole cake, it's baked, and there are no changes, I would object. I wouldn't necessarily say that's wrong. I would say, let's talk about, maybe I should say another way. I would say, have we considered this, or have we considered this, or have we considered that? And they would say, oh, no, that's not important. The cake is baked. That's not important. And we weren't on any particular deadline. And I would say, let's take a look at this and see what we can shift. Maybe we can change some of the things in the frosting and address some other issues. Still, the point is, it took a while for people that I worked with, to recognize that it was good to come in and talk to me about the status of projects, not to make sure that they were on track according to how I liked them, just to make sure that we were touching all the bases and brainstorming through all the issues. Mm-hmm. I loved when people were completely on track and they had thought about a variety of issues. I would say that in, probably 90% of the case that was going on, people had covered, most of the issues, but there was still, a few wild cards that they're always good to talk about. And I would think, in our brainstorming, I'm glad we brought this up because I would never have thought about that. And they just came up through our brainstorming. The project still went forward. We benefited from the brainstorming. That's what I would call the curiosity, the brainstorming. I don't know. What's your reflection on that?
Yeah, so you're the type of person that likes to be a part of the collaboration. You have 29 years of experience. You might have some ideas that could really shape what they're thinking about. So if I were working with you, the first thing I would do is I would come in with an outline and say, here's the problem we're trying to solve. Here's how I'm thinking about solving it. I'd really appreciate your input, even before I get started, because now I know, Barry, you like to have input. Then I would go off, create it, come back again and say, based on your feedback, here's the kind of direction that we're taking. How does this feel now? I'd make you a part of it.
Yeah. The point is, you're thinking, okay, I'm a person, I work here, I've got a boss who likes to be involved, so I'm going to take to the boss this situation. If I've got a boss who, I don't know, what other kinds of situations or bosses, can you categorize?
Yeah, so I once had a boss that we were first working together. We were new in our relationship. And I went in and gave him an outline and said, what do you think? And he said, well, if I tell you what I think, then why do I need you? Right? So what he was telling to me is, I don't need to give you feedback. You need to just go do it. Now, I was more comfortable in collaboration. He was more uncomfortable in saying, just go do it. That you learn who you're working with. And then you adjust your communication style and your patterns of behavior based on who you're working with. Now, I'll tell you another one. When I was at the Coca-Cola company, I had this new role. It was chief of staff, which was a really important role for development. They put people in there that they want to develop. And he was the president of the Coca-Cola company. Big job for me. And Monday morning, I would go in, and Tom would be saying, well, what about this? And what about that? And what about this? And I would just take notes. And I'm thinking, all right, I need to go execute, or I need to put a plan together. I'd come back the next Monday and I'd have an outline of a plan, and he'd say, no, don't worry about that. And then he would go into new ideas. And after about 3 weeks, I'm like, man, I'm really failing. And I called the former chief of staff and I said, I'm just failing. He goes, what's going on? I told him, he goes, oh, I should have told you. Unless Tom asks for the same thing 3 times, don't take action. See, Tom was an explorer. He wanted someone to bounce ideas off. So he was an extrovert that would think and speak at the same time. And so I learned with him, when we would get done with the conversation, is there anything you want me to take action on? He'd say yes or he'd say no. So I wasn't wasting time, and I wasn't frustrating him by coming back with something he wasn't looking for. So this whole thing about understanding who you're working with. Now, you can try to figure out over time, or you can ask in the beginning. So if I'm working with someone new now, if I have a new CEO I'm working with, I'll ask them, one, how do you like to best work together? How do you like to receive information? Right? What is your style of communication? I might not use those words, but like, for example, the CEO I was working for, he liked ideas and concepts, But when I'd go to the COO and present the same information, he wanted numbers and facts. So I learned that depending on who I'm working with is how I pattern my communication, because my job is to get the information from them or get their ideas from them. And in order for me to do that, I have to do it in a way that connects with them.
That's really interesting and important that as an employee, you have to look at the styles of the people that you're working with and adjust to the way that they like to communicate and receive information.
Absolutely.
So you wrote a book called The Curiosity Curve, and in it you talk about the 4 zones of curiosity. What are those?
Yes. So the 4 zones of curiosity are exploration, which I just talked about with my boss at Coca-Cola. So exploration, inspirational creativity, openness to new ideas, and focused engagement. So exploration, you know that you are working with someone that's in the explore mode when they say things like, well, wait a minute. Have we thought about this, or have we ever thought about that? I mean, they're going way out there to try to reach to see what's new and what's different, right? Someone that's open to new ideas is not the person that says, you know what, Barry, we've tried that here, it doesn't work. They're the person that says, tell me more. Then inspirational creativity is someone that says, you know what? I was reading the Wall Street Journal, and then I was reading People magazine, and I saw this connection, right? So they're taking information from maybe different industries or different genres, and they're putting together for a new idea. And then focused engagement is those individuals that say, okay, we've brainstormed, we've heard enough, now we're going into action. So focused engagement is actually taking curiosity and putting it into action. Because when you're in organizations, we got to get things done. And the reason the book is called The Curiosity Curve is because there's an optimal amount of curiosity. So you think about this, someone that is curious all the time, continuously asking questions, that can get exhausting and you might not get anything done. But on the other end of the continuum, someone that is not curious, it's probably no innovation. Things are stale. So it's having this balance of asking enough questions in order to get to the next idea.
So wait, did we talk about 4? We got exploration, inspiration, focused engagement.
And openness to new ideas.
Openness to new ideas. And how is openness to new ideas different from inspiration?
So inspirational creativity is when you take 2 different ideas and you begin to put them together. So I'll give you an example of this. In my book, I interviewed a woman named Dr. Joan Kelly. She was working for Yale Medical during COVID. And it was mayhem and chaos, and there was no protocol. Everything was so new and different. And so she had 2 things she had to do. She had to keep her staff safe and healthy, and she needed to keep her patients safe and healthy. And so she began to kind of dream about what else is out there. And she began to connect with the airline industry, right? And she talked with executives there and say, how do you keep the air filtered? How do you keep passengers safe? And this was a time when airlines had kiosks. Well, hospitals didn't have kiosks. You walked in, you talked to somebody, you filled out a form, there was pencils, there was paper. And so 2 things that Joan did that became best in class across the United States is 1, she put in kiosks. So you could walk into the ER room, put your information in, put your phone number in, and return to your car where it was safe. And when it was your time to come into the building, you were paged to come in. The second thing she did, she changed the whole filtration system. So the way in which the air was being regenerated, if you will. Now, that did 2 things. 1, it kept the air clean, but it also built the confidence of her staff that, oh, I can hear it coming on. I know we have clean air. And Joan went on to lead like multiple forums in helping other hospitals understand what she did in order to provide safety for the staff and the patient. That's people that take looking at their industry and somebody else's industry and pulling it together. Inspirational creativity. Got
it. So how do I know if I am a curious person? I want to be curious. What are the things that I need to do to move in that direction?
Right. So first off, here's the good news that you can take my curiosity assessment. It's free. It's on my website. It's 26 questions. It'll take you about 6 minutes, and it will tell you what your current level of curiosity is in those 4 states. So that's the beginning. That's the start.
And by the way, we'll put that in the show notes. So
Fabulous. Fabulous. So it's a gift that people can really understand their level of curiosity. And equally important is the level of curiosity of those they work with or their partners or their, if they have adult children. I don't know if young children would be able to take it, but in the sense of understanding who you're working with. And it's about intention. You wake up and you say, today I have the intention of being curious, and that simply means I want to seek to understand before being understood. I want to have the intention of being open-minded so I can better connect with other people. On Sunday, my daughter and I were at this Parisian cafe here where we live, and we were having coffee, and a slow smile came over my face, and she whispered, she goes, "What's so funny?" And I said, the table behind us, there were 4 women, and 3 of them were exploring. And one woman said, "Yeah, but how are we going to get it done?" And I go, so that those 3 women are in explore ideation mode. And that woman is like, we got to take this to action. So you begin to pay attention to what you hear people saying. And in the book, Curiosity Curve, I lay out a framework under each of those factors and how do you develop it and how do you look for it in others?
Wow, that's fascinating. So again, we'll put the test in the show notes, or you don't call it a test, the assessment.
Yes.
In the show notes. I have a question about intent, which you just mentioned. Mm-hmm. So I have 2 colleagues that I have addressed this issue of curiosity with because I feel like they were trying to be curious or working under the auspices of curiosity, but they were really trying to present their case and move the conversation or project in their direction. Now, let me give you 2 examples. One is a colleague who would ask questions about a project, and he would ask them in a way where it sounded like, well, when I was talking to him about a project, like I'd be on trial, but when he would do it with somebody else, it would be like asking dozens and dozens of questions. Have you thought about this? And what's going on with that? And tell me about this. And, have you thought about this roadblock? And people feel like they're defensive. And he believes that he's being curious when the tenor of the conversation is sort of one-sided. He's the inquisitor, and the person who's got an idea, or he claims that they're working on an idea together. It just feels like they're on their heels. And the second example is a colleague who is an attorney, and when he would ask questions, he would sound like he would play, I should say, the country lawyer. And he'd say, I have some questions about this. I'm really unsure about this. And he's faking a lack of knowledge, and sort of in the same way, asking questions, which is fine, but doing it in a way where it's friendlier. Is that go-to intention, and how do you deal with somebody who's doing that with you?
Yeah, so there are 2 things I heard in your stories. In the first example with your friend that is an attorney, but when he's not, actually practicing as an attorney, and he's just in a conversation with someone, he is locked into that old mode of interrogating like a witness, right? So for that individual, let's say, what is your intention? Is your intention really to connect with someone else and, helping them shift? Now, the other example that you gave was the individual that the country lawyer, and he actually is cross-examining a witness. I applaud that approach, right? As an attorney or your CIA, FBI, whatever it is, when you're trying to get answers out of an individual, you're going to behave differently. You're not trying to make a connection with that individual. You're not trying to build a relationship. You're not trying to collaborate. So the work that I do is with leaders and people that really want to make a change, that people that really want to make a difference by connecting, by genuinely being interested in your point of view.
Yeah, that is interesting. Well, I would say that in my career as a leader, for whatever reason, I have used curiosity, not as a tactic, but sort of as a way of life in trying to work with people and one, get to know them. It works also in just finding out about somebody, learning about somebody's background, history, what their story is, as well as talking in a targeted way about what's the status of this project and where are we and let's brainstorm and so on. It's just been a way that I approach dealing with people. And I would say that there's an element that I've also used when people come in with or approach me with a project or an idea, and I go back to Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and I love to, I don't know which habit it is. I think it's one of the first ones. It may be the first one, which is begin with the end in mind.
Yes.
And when somebody comes in with a project and it feels like it's all over the map and it's in a very loose brainstorming mode, I will ask, what's our goal here? What are we trying to accomplish? Is it making a tweak to a process that we're currently doing? Is it a new line of a product or a service? Where does this fit in with what we're currently doing? Just to understand the general direction of where we're going. Is it narrow or is it wide? And that way people can define more or less where we're going or where they want to go. And then it helps me brainstorm better with them. Have you seen that approach?
Yeah, I mean, that's a A+ approach in the sense of where are we going? What's the destination and how will we know if we've arrived? So bravo, Barry. I think you did it in a beautiful way.
Well, thank you. So how can curiosity be used to fix an organization that has stalled growth, teams that are disengaged, and achieve a gap between strategy, the idea, and then executing?
Mm-hmm. Now, let me give you an example of, I was working with an executive team and the CEO came to me and said, could you lead a 2-day strategy session? And so I said, what's going on? So, well, we're losing revenue. Our margins have slowed. We're not launching new products as quickly as our competitors, and we have high turnover. So I think you'd agree. It's kind of a tough spot to be in as an organization. So I then said, would you be willing to also take the curiosity assessment so we can get an idea where the team is in terms of curiosity? And they agreed to do that. So we were going through the strategy session. Then I shared with them their results in the 4 factors. And they were aggregated results around exploration, inspirational creativity, openness to new ideas, and focused engagement. And here's what's interesting is they don't know who scored what, but they see on a distribution bar, they see openness to new ideas, and they have 8 people that scored extremely high on openness to new ideas. And only 1 individual scored low on openness to new ideas. Now, what was one of their problems? They're not getting new products to market. So I sat back and I said, why do you think this might be happen? You all look like you are ready to go. And they said, yeah, we put together the strategic analysis, we do SWOTs, we present it to our CEO, and then it doesn't move forward. And the CEO raised his hand and said, you see that low number? That's me. So here you have the majority of the organization, this executive team with wanting to go to the market. And the CEO says, wow, this is my baby. I'm the founder here. I know the best way to do this. And then I said, how's it working? And it was this open eyes of, wow, I've not been receptive to my team's direction on this. And with that alone, they significantly turned their organization around. And not just because of that one thing, but this thing of, wait, how open are we to other people's ideas? How are we drawing from what we're seeing in the marketplace? And are we acting as one team? That's the power of curiosity.
So that's the assessment pointed that out, which is a great tool. Well, actually, let me ask this question. It feels to me like to be curious, you also have to be vulnerable. You have to accept that you don't know everything. And that feels like maybe to a leader, I need to know more. You gave an example earlier about that kind of a leader. And as a leader, how do I deal with that? How do I accept that I don't know everything?
Yeah, what I counsel the leaders I work on with is I say, when somebody asks you a question, the most powerful thing you can say is, I don't know. Let's explore it, right? Even if you think you have an inclination or you have some ideas, is to say, I don't know. Let's get into it, right? So you're showing that that's vulnerability. The other thing is leaders aren't supposed to have all the answers. They're just supposed to have good questions.
Yeah, that's true. Well, that issue of vulnerability is a tough one for a lot of leaders to admit. Well, we're saying admitting I don't know, but maybe there's a bridge there, and maybe looking at it from the opposite perspective is not that I don't know everything, it's that let's learn about things together. So we don't like to say we don't know. I don't really mind saying it, or saying let's investigate or whatever it might be. But I think other people are. Not everyone, but I think a lot of people are less interested in saying those words. I don't know. I think that people can say, let's learn more, something of that nature. That makes sense? I'm trying to think about it from a psychological perspective, as opposed to you'll just admit that you don't know, and that's okay. Like, I'm not going to say I don't know. But what else can I say?
So if your true intent is to create a culture of curiosity, a culture of engagement, saying, I don't know, but let's learn together, is you're showing that you're modeling vulnerability. You're modeling that I still have more to learn, and let's learn it together.
Yeah. So I'm a growing leader in an organization, and I feel like I'm a curious person. Is the best thing for me to do is model the behavior? You talked about earlier working with certain kinds of bosses, so you have to sort of get into their square peg or round peg, whatever it might be, and you have to talk to them like they want to be spoken to. Nevertheless, if I am a curious person, what's the best thing for me to do? Do I bring it up with others and say, let's do it this way? Or do I model the behavior? What's an appropriate tack forward?
Yeah, I think the first one is you model it. And how do you model it? So when you're in a team meeting and you're presenting ideas or you're presenting the direction for the 2026 annual year, is saying, what have I missed or what are we missing here? Is begin to get your team involved in the creation of what comes next. Or when you're presenting something and just say, what did I miss? Right? And when someone asks a question, you reward that person for asking that question. That's a really great question. Let's think about it as a team. Or when someone challenges the status quo or they're challenging what they've just seen, is say, I appreciate this. I know that your intent is to make things better. Let's explore what you just said. And then at the end, you might just say, well, I heard what you said. We're still going to head in this direction, but please keep poking at things because I'm interested in your point of view. So what you're doing is you're modeling it and you're encouraging people to continue to advance in that direction.
I want to ask you a quick question about artificial intelligence. One thing I've discovered with ChatGPT is that if I don't know something about a topic, but I know generally the direction of something, but I don't know everything, I will ask ChatGPT to ask me questions. I'll say something like, ask me 20 to 25 questions about this topic. I don't know everything about it, but I want to understand what I know and what I don't know. Press, return and see what it comes up. And a lot of the questions I will know, and then some of the questions I will not have thought of. So I'm trying to sort of brainstorm with it, not asking it for the answer, but teasing out information that I might not have where I might need to learn more. And I'm wondering if I'm going to a meeting on a project and I don't really know much about it. I'm going to listen about the project, or I might have some general ideas on it. I wonder if that's a strategy that could work to help me become more curious, where I can use AI to help me ask questions about a topic so that we can all learn more. Mm-hmm. Have you thought about that?
I love that idea. I think it's fantastic. I'm taking a course in physics. You know why? Because I'm just curious about physics. And the way this course starts out is it asks you a series of questions to gain your knowledge. Right. So it asks you a question and you write it down, and then it unveils what the answer is, and then what's the physics behind it. And it's similar to what you're doing, Barry, with chat. I love that. I've never thought of that, but I'm definitely going to use it.
Well, there you go. It is fun to do because it brings you to sort of the end of the branch of the twig of your knowledge, and then you realize, I've got a few things that I need to learn about, and then you can go and research on those. Anyway, it's kind of a fun technique.
I love it.
So, last question for you, Deborah. I have a question about advice that you might give to people that are coming into the workforce, that are in the workforce. What's something that you can offer to help them on their journey?
Yes. So having spent 4 decades in Fortune 50 companies, what I would encourage emerging leaders and those that are starting their career is to chase the experience, not the money. Meaning, where can you get the greatest experience, and then where can you go and get the next experience? So that might be, taking lateral moves or even a step back, so that you're continuously building on your experience, so that you can continuously add greater contribution and impact to the organization, because the money will follow.
That's fantastic advice. Is become more well-rounded in your career, right?
Yes.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Deborah. I've really enjoyed the conversation today. And then again, in the show notes, we'll put in the curiosity assessment and information on how to get in touch with you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Barry, for the conversation.
Wrapping up, what's the one thing you can implement today? This interview offers you a lot of ideas, but I think the most important action you can take is to be sincere about your curiosity. It shows you want to work with people to achieve a better outcome. Thank you for listening, and congratulations! You are a member of the End of the Show Club. My mission is to help you grow as a leader, elevate your career, and improve your life. I know you enjoy learning leadership tools, so please hit subscribe. In return, my promise is to keep bringing you ideas that make you a better leader. If you have any questions or want to get in touch, send me a note. The address is leadershipcareeraccelerator@gmail.com. And check out and engage with me on Substack at Leadership Career Accelerator.